Hey everybody. Naturally, now that I've got my camera over here, he's stopped doing it. But my Striped Raphael is in his cave. You can see his little tail sticking out. Normally you see his little face sticking out right there. And if you'll notice, you can kind of see some space between the wood and his rock. And I watched him tonight. He was struggling to get out of there. You can see this algae wafer over to the right there. He was trying so desperately to get to that, and he just could not wiggle out of the cave. He was just too fat to get out of it. Now, I'm assuming he could obviously get out of it. I don't know if he went out the back or he can sort of turn himself sideways, but he was really struggling to get out of his cave, and so I decided I was going to open it up a little more. So all I did was sort of slide the rock a little more towards the back of the tank. If you look, you see the leading edge of the rock right here. This was actually sort of laying right up against here. And so I just sort of shifted the whole thing back and over. And of course, as soon as I did that, his house is now different. And he was making all kinds of fuss and turning around and sticking his face out through the crack right there and doing all kind of weird stuff like he was checking the place out. And of course, I went to go get my camera. And by the time I got back, we saw what we saw with his little tail sticking out. I figured he was kind of done. Oh, see, that's what I was waiting to see. He can move out of that cave with ease now. Now, I was hoping he wasn't going to get that entire algae wafer, because when he puts them in his mouth like that, they're so big they barely fit, but they do fit. And then it looks like he struggles and chokes on it, and he tries to spit it out, and then he winds up eating a whole entire algae wafer. I threw the entire algae wafer in because I've got my Royal Farlowella at this end of the tank. I know it's hard to see, but you can kind of see its fin sticking out right there. It's hanging on the back of that piece of woodwork. Got my little group of cories down there munching on another algae wafer. So that's its tail fin you can see sticking out, that little forked thing right there over top the rock. And then there's its caudal fin and its pectoral fins. Sometimes they're called whiptails, sometimes they are called twig catfish, and you can see why they're called twig catfish. They're really hard to spot unless you know what you're looking for. So that's what the algae wafers went in there for. And of course now we just saw my Striped Raphael gobble that one up in its entirety, so that was a whole algae wafer gone. But oh well. The other thing I've been looking at while I got you here standing in front of the tank, I just fed the Tubifex worms, which is something that this little chocolate gourami readily eats. I've seen the chocolate gourami eating flake food. I've seen it eating little bits of crumbled up freeze-dried krill. And of course it eats the Tubifex, and then occasionally I put spirulina in there. And it eats the spirulina, I'm sorry, not spirulina, daphnia. I've got some dried daphnia that I put in there, and it eats that. So tonight I fed Tubifex worms, and of course I always sort of want to look to make sure they're eating properly. They are a fish that's sort of a finicky eater. And I only see one of them. I do not for the life of me see the other one anywhere in the tank, and I've been standing here for about 10 minutes looking for it. So I don't know what to make of it, but I do not see the other one. I looked on the filter intake. I don't see it stuck to it. Of course, there's some other gunk stuck to it that's sort of blocking my line of vision, so you never know. Possibly got eaten by my Striped Raphael during the night. Might be, you know, if it is dead, it could be lying in the back of the tank just somewhere where I couldn't see it. It's a tiny little thing, and there's plenty of places for something like that to vanish into. But I simply do not see it. I can, you know, I spot this one down here. I can keep picking him out left and right. Every time I look around, I see the two little honey gouramis in here. Oh wow, there's my Striped Raphael. He's out and about. Didn't even notice him. I'm busy looking up at the top of the tank. And he's out doing his thing. So I used to have about 13 or 14 neons in this tank, and I'm down to 3 or 4, maybe 5. So I'm pretty sure he comes out at night and hoovers up the occasional neon, and you know, they go on sale for $1 a piece, and I wind up buying 20 or 30 of them and putting them in quarantine, and Eventually they'll go in this tank or other tanks, and over time they sort of vanish. I just saw about 5 of them go by in the back there, and there's a couple more in the corner, so I still have a fair amount in here. But slowly but surely they get picked off, and I just kind of see it as, you know, sort of expensive feeder fish, you know, slow release, I guess. And again, you know, no big deal. However, if that Striped Raphael also happened to gobble up my gourami, I'm not going to be happy about that at all. But I just don't see it anywhere. I still don't see it. Now, the gourami was also the one that was not necessarily like a runt in its size, but it definitely had that sort of behavior. It was not bold at all. It always seemed to want to go into the corner and hide. You'll notice I keep standing down here looking at this end of the tank. This is where it always came and hid. It was almost always up in these Java fern, and it just sort of buried itself in the Java fern because it got protection in there, I guess. It you know, it was just so easily bullied and so easily intimidated by every other fish in the tank. It was, you know, so in my experience, fish like that tend to just get bullied to death. You know, I had opaline gouramis in this tank, and one of them eventually died because you know, every time it tried to come out, the other one just sort of bullied it back into the corner. And it fed, you know, I watched it eat, and it, you know, there was no physical aggression. It never had scales damaged or fins torn, but it was just always harassed, and it was just harassed and harassed and harassed. And, you know, it took months and months and months, but eventually it died. And my smaller moonlight gourami was the same way. I used to have another moonlight gourami in this tank that was similar in size. I got them at the same time, and this one just grew up to be more dominant than the other one, and it just sort of kept the other one bullied into the corner all the time. And eventually that one just, again, sort of died for no reason, and yet this one's still, you know, going strong at 5 years old. So we've got this one. We can see this one swimming around just fine. It's always been outgoing and fairly bold. It gets spooked easily enough. You know, other fish come up to it. It'll dart away for a second, but it swims right back to wherever it was and gets, you know, resumes whatever it was looking at. So for a, you know, reclusive and shy, docile sort of gourami like the chocolate gouramis are known to be, this one seems to be pretty bold and outgoing. And the other one, see, I mean, you can see it right down there with other fish. It's just not really that bothered. Awesome little fish, though. I'm loving them. And I just really wish I could find that other one. If I'm down to the one, I guess so be it. There's nothing I can do about it. But, you know, I'd like to find it. So I'm going to call that good on this video. I'll keep my eyes open, and, you know, maybe when I come back in a little while, I'll have another look around and we'll see what's going on. Maybe my Striped Raphael will come back out and we'll get some more video of him or something. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching this one. Make sure you subscribe. You never know what you're going to get with me. It's kind of hit or miss, but it's always good and you don't want to miss any of it. So don't forget, this one is my 55-gallon gourami tank. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.